Okay, so we are talking about stem cells. And what we're going to talk about in particular today is harvesting your own stem cells so that you can use it for a variety of things. So just a disclaimer, I'm not going to talk about any specific indications for the stem cells, and you'll understand why as we get into the talk. Okay, but we are going to talk about what's exciting and what's ahead and what we can do now with your stem cells. So let me see if I can. Okay, so yeah, so this is an illustration of a wound. And when we get hurt, when we get an injury, our body wants to heal. And we want a seamless healing like this. And how does that occur? All that occurs because the stem cells in our body can create new cells to heal any wounds, to regenerate tissue that's being turned over on a regular basis. So stem cells are very important in our lives. We need stem cells to stay alive, and we need stem cells to get well when we're injured or hurt. So as we get older, our bodies start to break down. So we start getting aches in our joints, we get fatigue, we start developing a lot of different conditions that kind of come along with aging. So if you're getting older like me, your bodies are going to start breaking down like this bridge here. And we don't we don't necessarily want to destroy and get rid of it. We want to try to fix it. So how are we going to fix this broken body or this broken bridge? And the way that our bodies repair is with the stem cells. And if you can think of stem cells as a repair crew that will come and start directing the repair job. So we have stem cells lying around in our body. They come and see the damage and they assess it and they figure out what they need to do to fix it. And let's face it, when we're older, our stem cells that we have in reserves may not be enough to do the job and keep the repairs going. So the damage may outpace the repair. So we need some help. How do we get some help? We need more stem cells. So we need to call upon um, your body to either recruit more stem cells from your own body, or we can take stem cells from somewhere else in your body and bring it to the area where the stem cells are needed to do the repair. So if we get a good supply of stem cells, we can actually repair damage that's occurring and also help prevent future damage. So how do we get more stem cells? Well, what we can do is harvest the stem cells. And you can use stem cells from many different areas in your body. And we'll talk about the best places to harvest stem cells. And what I like to do is I like to harvest stem cells from the fat because your fat is loaded with stem cells and we have plenty of it. So most people don't mind giving up a little bit of their fat for us to harvest stem cells from. So these bears represent the stem cells in your body. So we will take some fat, harvest it, and extract the stem cells from the fat. And here's the really neat thing that we can do now. We can take these stem cells and we can send it to an FDA registered lab where they can breed these stem cells. Well, we don't actually breed them because stem cells don't have sex, but we can clone them and then we can freeze them. So what we do is when we send it to our partner lab, American Cell Technology, what they'll do for us is they'll keep these cells frozen. And the cells don't die when they're frozen. They just kind of go to sleep and they're cryopreserved. So they can stay in this frozen state indefinitely. And here's why this is important, because the stem cells are going to stay in the state that they're in. They're not going to get any older while they're frozen. So while you're getting older, your stem cells are asleep at the same age when they were harvested, and we can keep them frozen. That's like negative 190 degrees Celsius. So it's really cold. We can't just put them in the freezer. We have to cryo freeze them in a liquid nitrogen bath or a cryo freezer. And this is what this lab specializes in. And then when we need more stem cells, here's what we can do. We can unfreeze those stem cells, and then we can clone them so we can get more stem cells. So we can have an abundant supply of stem cells from the cells that we harvested. When we need it, we can get those younger stem cells so that we can use them to do the repair and maintenance that your body needs. So these frozen stem cells are expanded, which means that they're cloned, and we can do it to several generations. So you have almost unlimited supply of stem cells for the rest of your life. And now when we need it, we can send those extra stem cells to help out your older stem cells that are fatigued and couldn't really do the job by themselves. Now that they have help from your younger self, they're going to be able to repair the damage quickly and very efficiently. So when the damage is done, when the damage is repaired, the stem cells just kind of go back into their resting state and wait for a signal to do more repair. So that's just an illustration of how your stem cells work in your body. And now let's talk about what we're doing with American Cell Technology. This is a cell bank, which means that they take cells, human cells, and they cryopreserve them. So you're probably familiar with cord blood. Like 21 years ago, when we had our first child, they asked us if we wanted to freeze the stem cells from our baby's umbilical cord. And we did it because at that time, there was no use for the stem cells. We couldn't use it at the time because they didn't know what we can do with it. But they knew that these stem cells were going to be very important in the future, and to preserve them early at the youngest stage is going to give us the most vibrant stem cells that we can use in the future. So we stored our baby stem cells. But what about me? What about us, people who were born before we had the ability to store our umbilical cord stem cells? Well, now we're able to extract stem cells from our adult cells, because now we know that your body is loaded with stem cells. Yeah, they're a little bit older, but they're still good. And the younger we can harvest them, the younger we can freeze them at our youngest period, which is now. So I'm the youngest I'm ever going to be for the rest of my life. So I would want to harvest my stem cells now so I can have it in the future. Now, American Cell Technology has been around, and they've been storing cord blood. And now they are also they're also storing bone marrow and adipose, which means stem cells that are extracted from the fat. So this is a lab that has a lot of experience, a very good reputation. In fact, they're the largest personal stem cell bank in the country. And the lab is FDA registered, which is very important because that means the FDA inspects the lab to make sure that everything is done sterilely so that there's no contamination, and ethically. So, and they're being watched and regulated. So there's no funny business going on in the labs because unfortunately, that kind of stuff happens in this industry, and we want to work with a lab that is reputable. And we've looked into several companies, and we chose American Stem Cell Technology for their reputation because we want to store the cells with a company that is going to take great care of your cells. So now let's talk about what stem cells are. Okay, stem cells are immature cells. So, so a baby, when we have a fertilized egg, it's just a single cell, and it's going to divide, and those cells are going to differentiate, which means they're going to start turning into different organs. So from a single cell, we can get a whole baby in like 9 months. That one single cell will keep dividing and differentiating into different types of tissue so that we can form an actual human being. And what do I mean by differentiation? So as the cells divide, they start to go down different paths. Some of the cells will turn into blood cells. Some of them will turn into bone cells. Some of them will turn into skin. Some of them will turn into brain cells, or whatever your body needs. These stem cells can eventually turn into different cells in your body so that we can regenerate tissue and we can repair tissue that gets damaged as we go through our lives. And when we have actually an embryo, those cells can turn into anything. And those are pluripotent cells, which means they can turn into anything. But what we're interested in, we don't want the pluripotent cells because they're too unstable. They can turn into just about anything. So if we use that, then we're not going to necessarily get the type of tissue we want. So what we want are multipotent cells, which are cells that have gone down a road towards differentiated organs. So we want cells that are closer to skin. So fat cells are closer to skin cells if you're trying to repair skin or bone. So let's talk quickly about some of the other types of stem cells that we have. And now I want to make this very clear that we do not use embryonic cells for treatments that we do with stem cells for a couple of reasons. One, there's a lot of ethical issues with using embryonic cells, which means we don't take fetuses, we don't take aborted fetuses to harvest stem cells. That's a no-no. That's not legal in this country, and nor is it necessary. And it's not, and those cells are not good for what we want to do. Because remember, I said we don't want cells that are too immature because they can turn into anything. Well, if we use embryonic cells, they can actually turn into cancer cells. So we don't use fetal cells. We use adult cells, and adult cells are from the moment you're born. So when we take cells from the umbilical cord, those are actually considered adult cells. And it's from birth tissue that would have been discarded, usually from the placenta. We can take stem cells from amniotic fluid. We can take it from the umbilical cord. We can take it from the amniotic membrane. So that's one source of stem cells. And the nice thing about those type of stem cells is that they're very young. The disadvantage is that if you receive stem cells from a umbilical source and they're not your own, then that's called an um, allogenic harvest, which means that it's from somebody else. Okay, so we do have the issue of receiving somebody else's genetic material, and we're not really sure how that's going to affect your health in the future. So far, everything, it looks like it's not a major issue, but at this time, there's legal issues with getting somebody else's cells. So, but don't worry, we have your own cells that we can do. We can take bone marrow, okay, or fat. Those are the easiest ways that we can get stem cells from an adult. Now, bone marrow is a little tricky because we actually have to drill into your bone, into your hip or your femur to extract the stem cells. And it turns out those cells are good for like replacing blood cells. Like we use bone marrow for treating patients after they've had chemotherapy or radiation, where we destroy their own bone marrow and have to transplant somebody else's bone marrow or your own. So it's great for those type of things, but for regenerating skin and bone, hair, that kind of stuff, the fat stem cells seem to be actually a much better type of stem cells for that. And luckily, the fat is easy to harvest. At least it is for me. Finally, there is what we call induced pluripotent stem cells. Now, this is a way that we can take adult cells and actually manipulate them in the lab to revert them into stem cells. Now, this is not the kind of thing that we do in the office. This is the kind of thing that you need like a big pharmaceutical company to do, and that's what they do. So there are actually stem cells that have been made in the lab, and those are considered drugs. And that's something that we don't use, but you'll see why that's important in a little bit. Okay, now let's talk about the legal issues. So the FDA wants to classify all stem cells as drugs. And the reason is because it seems to actually work. We're finding that stem cells are actually a great way to treat a lot of medical conditions. And the position of the FDA, and of course, this is influenced by the pharmaceutical companies, is to say that if stem cells actually work, then they are drugs, and you can't be making drugs in the office. You have to get FDA clearance to make drugs. So this is the argument that has been going on. We feel that your stem cells, especially if you use your own stem cells, it's like a blood transfer, which is just moving cells, and that's not a drug, and the FDA doesn't have jurisdiction over that, but that's what's been going on. And to be fair, the FDA also is concerned about safety. And if it's not regulated, there are a lot of scammers or bad actors, as they call, that want to take advantage of people because people are so excited about stem cells. So what's happening now? Okay, just a short history lesson. Back in the 90s, there was a moratorium on stem cell research in the United States. And that was mainly out of concern that aborted fetal tissue would be used to do stem cell research. Because back then we didn't really understand much about stem cells, and we thought that the only source of stem cells was from fetal tissue, which is completely wrong, because we know that if you're alive, you have stem cells in your body. So we don't use stem cells from fetuses anymore. We use adult stem cells. So then the moratorium was lifted, and we started using stem cells. And for a little while, there was very little or almost no oversight. And stem cells were found to be very safe, even allograft, which means stem cells, especially like the umbilical cells that we stored from the babies. Well, it turned out that you can use it in other people too, and it seemed to be very safe, and nobody was getting immune reaction or rejection because these cells were so immature that your body didn't recognize them as foreign. So stem cells were being used for all kinds of things all over the world. And the FDA was concerned because it was so unregulated and people were using it and they were promising cures for everything. They were promising that it would cure anything from cancer to Alzheimer's disease, to MS, all kinds of cures that were being promised. And this was not good because a lot of people were being taken advantage of, and companies were coming in and just offering stem cells at extravagant fees. So in 2017, the FDA sent the warning letters out to the practitioners, to all the doctors who were doing this, and they said, "Let you better, you know, take rein yourselves in and put, you better make sure that you come up with some regulation and self-police yourself to prevent prevent bad things from happening." But it was pretty much ignored. And in 2021, a couple of things happened. Um, Inevitably, there were some adverse effects and pretty serious ones, and the FDA just took that opportunity to just crack down on stem cells, and they declared that stem cells are drugs, and we can't use stem cells in the office, and they threatened very hefty fines for using it. So that pretty much put a stop to stem cells again in the United States. And so what happened? Well, as they say, it's all fun and games till somebody loses an eye. So and that's exactly what happened. Stem cells were being used by clinics all over the country, all over the world, and they were using it for all kinds of things. And for the most part, nobody was actually getting hurt. So the FDA couldn't really stop it because at that time, it wasn't considered a drug. So it was happening, and nothing bad was happening until somebody decided that they were going to start injecting stem cells into the eye. And of course, um, when you start doing things like that, some people lost their vision. And again, to be fair, these were people who had severe macular degeneration, and they were kind of losing their vision anyway. But when they started injecting stem cells in the eye, the stem cell actually kind of grew behind the retina and caused them to detach, and they lost their vision. So with that, the FDA decided, stem cells are not safe, and we need to regulate this. And um, so two companies were sued by the US government, and one, US Stem Cells, lost their case, and it was not because the stem cells were unsafe, it was because of their marketing, because apparently they were making claims that were not substantiated. And the other company, Cell Surgical, continued to fight on in court, and they actually won um, a case, and stem cells were declared not to be a drug. And then they most recently, on appeal, that was turned over. So that's still going on. And then there was another incident where one of the big stem cell companies that supplied umbilical blood, umbilical stem cells, had some issues with infection. And it turned out that the infection was because this company was illegally importing stem cells from Mexico and claiming that they were from the US. And when you're dealing with these cells outside of the country, there's no, the regulations are very different, especially when they're being imported through back channels. So these cells were infected and some people got infections. So it wasn't really the stem cells themselves, it was what the practitioners and the companies were doing that caused these issues. But in either case, it didn't matter. The FDA kind of put a stop to it. And because of the strict fines that they threatened, most legitimate doctors, including myself, stopped doing stem cells because it wasn't worth my practice to get in trouble doing stem cells. So what's happening now? Well, we actually have a window of opportunity here. And this is what's happening. And this is like in real time because it's recent. So Peter Marks, who was in charge of the biologics for the FDA, was pretty much the guy that was writing the regulations and directing what we can and cannot do with the stem cells. And I was actually fortunate enough to be on the call with Peter Marks when he addressed the doctors who were doing stem cells back in 2021. And that's when he kind of laid out what the rules for how we can use stem cells. And some of the, just briefly, what he said we can do is if it's on the, if you're using somebody's own stem cells, okay, and you're doing it at the same time in the same day, then it's okay. And if it's got to be autologous, which means it's from the same person, it's got to be homologous, which means it's for used in the same type of place where we harvested it from, and it has to be done in the same procedure. So when we're doing liposuction and fat transfers, we're able to do it at the same time. So we've been doing stem cell treatments all along under those guidelines, but we haven't been able to market it or anything. So you didn't know that we were doing it. We would just offer it to patients when they were getting other treatments. And it's been a little frustrating for me because I know all the things that these stem cells can do, but I can't tell people about it. So, so what happened? Recently, in April, Peter Mark, as you know, the administration changed, and RFK Jr. became the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and he's very excited about stem cells and felt that regulations should be lifted. And Peter Marks, who worked very hard to set up these regulations, felt that we were going in the wrong direction. So he actually resigned. And now we have the regulations are not lifted, but nobody's really enforcing them. And it looks like the new administration is going to be much more lenient on stem cells. And it's good and bad because now we have an opportunity to start offering stem cell treatments again without getting in trouble. But here's the concern. The reason why stem cells were taken off the market in the first place was because of the so-called bad actors. And these are opportunists that will take advantage of people that are desperate for stem cells because now people know about stem cells. They know all the great things that stem cells can do. And these bad actors will come in and they will set up a whole system because I remember with this was happening before where they would be putting full page ads in the paper and offering miracle cures for everything from cancer to Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, and promising stem cells. And then they would take advantage of people who were desperate and not giving them the full disclosure and taking their money. So, so the regulations were good in the sense that they got rid of the bad actors. And here's just an example of some of the ads that would show up in the papers every day. You might recall seeing some of these. And this is, what they're saying is not necessarily untrue, but you can't make claims that it's going to cure a disease because we don't have evidence, which means that there's no clinical trials that were done with randomized placebo-controlled, that kind of trial, and they're very expensive to do. And if it's not a drug and there's no patent, then you can't do then nobody's going to benefit. No one company is going to benefit financially. So there's no incentive to actually do these clinical trials. But what these companies were doing was they were offering like free dinner seminar, and then their motto was every person that came for this free dinner, they were going to hound them until they signed up for stem cells. So I actually worked with one of these companies for a very short time until I realized that what their tactics were. My role was to make sure the patients were candidates, and when I said they're not candidates, um, I I was put under a lot of pressure to clear them, and I don't want to go back to that again. So we want to do this very ethically and be very transparent to patients who want stem cells. But we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because stem cells have so much potential. And for people who are educated and know what the potentials are, they're looking for a legitimate source where they can get stem cells without having to go out of the country. So now we're able to offer that here in the United States at Omni Aesthetics. So that's why I'm so excited about it. And let's just get back to our stem cells drugs. So some stem cells are drugs. There's actually a treatment called CAR T therapy, and this is a patented drug, and it's made in the lab by manipulating adult cells and turning them, reverting back into stem cells. And they're very specific and targeted. And they have a treatment that's FDA approved for treating a certain type of B-cell lymphoma. And they have like a 50% cure rate for that, which is actually great because this is a condition that was pretty much fatal. So we have exciting things that happen with stem cells and the pharmaceutical companies with the great work that they do. The problem with this is that for them to develop this kind of drug, it's very, very expensive, $375,000 for one dose. So paying a few $1,000s for a stem cell treatment, if you think that's expensive. The advantage of it is that these drugs are FDA approved and possibly covered by insurance, but it's not something that is easily covered. So we have that, but where do we stand with the stem cells that we do in the office? So our stem cells are not specific like the ones that the pharmaceutical companies make. And they're pretty much in their natural form. Okay, we don't manipulate them. We don't do anything other than just extract them and freeze them, and then clone them for a limited number of generations. So it's kind of, I like to use the analogy of breast milk. Okay, so we know breast milk has so many benefits for the baby. Okay, so for a while, breast milk was looked down upon because they felt that the formula had more vitamins and more specific. But now we realize that breast milk has so many benefits that that surpass the formula. So what if the FDA or somebody decided that it's illegal for you to pump breast milk? That's kind of what they did when they stopped us from using stem cells. So we have good things that nature makes, and even though we can't say specific things about it, we know that it's great for your health. So for people who understand the benefits of the stem cells, now we have an option. And so this is what we're doing. As we said, we're working with American Cell Technology, which is the largest stem cell bank in the United States, and they're a very reputable company. And they're FDA registered, which means that they are strictly abiding by the FDA rules and with good tissue practice, which is the standard that we want the labs to do. And so as we mentioned, there are certain criteria that we can use. And if we stick to these guidelines, we can do it legally and ethically, and we can offer stem cells to our patients. And now, by working with this lab, we can actually have your stem cells stored in a very controlled under very controlled conditions at American Cell Technology, and then we can have those cells available to us if we need it. So just to review why you may want to bank your stem cells, your cells are getting older with you. So if we take some cells now and freeze them, those cells are going to stop aging. So that even though you're getting older, you can always go back and get those stem cells from when it was harvested. And there's a lot of potential uses for it in beauty, which is what we do, for treating injuries, for doing for your immune system, just wellness in general. And there's future indications for the stem cells that we don't even know about. But if we have your cells banked, then we know we have that available for you when you need it. So that's why we're so excited about banking the stem cells. And so what are your options right now? So what we can do is we can bank your stem cells right now here at Omni Aesthetics. What people have been doing is that they've been going overseas until now. They've been going to Mexico, to Panama, to the Caribbean to have this treatment done. And the cost of that treatment is expensive because not only do they charge a lot for this, you have to pay for airfare, hotel, and you have to stay there, and then you have to go back to get treated. And then you're not, when you're doing it in a foreign country, you don't really know how well those cells are being kept and how sterile it is. So now we have a way that we can do it for you much more safely and at a much lower cost than you were able to in the past. So that's why we are so excited about this stem cell banking that we are doing here. And the fat is stored in liquid nitrogen, which means that they're frozen in time, and they're only minimally manipulated. They're only cloned to 5 generations, and it's in an FDA inspected facility. And when we harvest the stem cells, we only really need to do it once because we can clone them, and we can keep getting the cells from the lab whenever you need it. So you don't have to keep doing your liposuction, and your cells don't age when they're frozen. So they're going to stay the way they are until you need it. And at Omni Aesthetics, I've been doing stem cell treatments for over 10 years now. And liposuction, same thing. So this is something that we do every day. And we use the stem cells. We do all kinds of regenerative treatments. We use PRP, and now we're able to bank your stem cells and do it legally without getting in trouble. And we can use those cells for so many things. And I can't talk about specific indications because then that would violate some of the rules from the FDA about not making claims. But we are allowed to talk to you on a one-on-one basis. So if you want to give us a call, set up a consultation, me or anybody in my staff would be happy to talk to you about exactly what's involved, the costs, and how you can possibly enroll in a study that's being conducted, that we're working with the company to do some safety studies. So that's what we're doing now at Omni Aesthetics. So just gonna see if there's any questions. Yeah. All right. So here's some questions. The chat's disabled. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let me see if I can. Okay. So yeah. So question: how is the stem cell harvested? So as I was saying, the stem cells um, are harvested in many different ways. You can do it from bone marrow. You can take it from umbilical tissue. But what we do here at Omni Aesthetics is we like to use fat because that's our thing. We take fat every day. We harvest fat and we use it for doing fat transfers. We do liposuction. So it's very easy for us to harvest your fat. And what we do is we just use a little numbing fluid to numb the area. And then for the stem cells, we do a manual harvest where we take a cannula that goes into the fat and use a gentle suction to extract fat. It's numb, it's not painful, and there's really very little downtime from harvesting the fat. So it's an easy process. And then we don't need a lot of fat. We just take about 2 tablespoons of fat and we put it in the transport kit and send it to the lab where they will process it and freeze it and keep it for you. Okay, so what happens when you need the stem cells? When can you use it? So it takes a minimum of about 3 weeks for them to grow out your stem cells. Uh, so once we send it over, you have to wait about 3 weeks before you can access it. But um, the nice thing is that we can actually use some of the stem cells when we harvest it. So we can give you your stem cells at the time when you're being harvested. So that's an advantage that we can do because we have the ability to do that the same day. We just can't clone or freeze your fat here at the office, but we have the FDA registered facility that does it for us, which is really nice. So it's kind of the same question, does it hurt? It's actually once we numb it, it's really not a painful process at all. It takes about an hour for the whole thing from start to finish. Okay, what if Okay, what if you're having liposuction? So that's the beauty of what we do here. So if we're doing liposuction, we're taking your fat anyway. So we don't have to charge you um, for a whole fat harvesting. So if you're just coming for harvesting, there's a cost to it. We can go over that with you. But when you're doing your liposuction or fat transfer, um, our our charge to you for the actual harvesting is going to be minimal. There is a fee from the lab for the storage and the um, and for retrieving the fat, but the prices have come down a lot. Like it's a fraction of what it used to cost back in the day to do this. So again, you can give us a call and we can talk to you in person about any concerns that you have, any questions that you have, and um, and again, me or any of my staff would be happy to talk to you. Okay. So when can we start? So we're available to do this. This is something that we can do right now. So if you're interested, just give us a call and find out about what this can mean for you. I'm going to, so we just set up the account with this company, and as soon as I get one of my colleagues that can do liposuction on me to harvest the fat, I'm going to get my cells banked, and we're really excited to get started. So I think we're out of time now. So we can, again, just give us a call. And if you have any further questions, give us a call, 201-368-3800. We'll set up a personal consultation with you and be happy to talk to you. This is Dr. Song. Thank you very much.